So you know we love dinosaurs here on this channel. And so far we've done a bunch of videos about the scariest ones, the biggest ones, and even some of the ones that are just straight up alien. But there's another group of dinosaurs that maybe isn't as scary or as giant, but they are just as interesting. They are the ones that are absolutely weird. Like really, really weird. So today, let's talk about these dinosaurs that are so weird, they defy science. Number 7 is Therizinosaurus. We've actually talked about this one before, but it's worth talking about again because it's just too bizarre. This meat-eater lived during the late Cretaceous period around 70 million years ago in what is now Mongolia. But that's not what makes it weird. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's the combination of seemingly normal features with other super abnormal ones. Its skull was more or less like other theropods, which means that overall it kind of looked like a T-Rex. However, instead of teeth, it had a bunch of sickles along its mouth, sort of like a giant pair of scissors. And if that wasn't enough, it also had enormous claws on the end of its hands. These things were so big that they may have been able to slash through the hide of pretty much any animal it encountered. Basically, imagine Freddy Krueger decided to become a dinosaur rather than a human killer. That's how weird this thing is. Number 6 is Carnotaurus. Now this dinosaur is weird in a lot of ways, but mostly it's famous for having those two little nubbies where its arms should be. This guy was a relatively small horned dinosaur that lived in what is now North and South America between about 72 and 70 million years ago. Compared to other plant eaters of the time, it was very speedy and agile. And even though it only had these itty-bitty arms, it used them well to slash at its prey like a pair of scissors. Although the most shocking thing about this guy is obviously those tiny little arms. Scientists aren't entirely sure why it evolved such short limbs, especially since all of its relatives had normal-sized arms. Some believe that maybe it just didn't use its arms very much, so evolution just kind of took them away. Others say that maybe it used them to hold on to females during mating season. Whatever the reason, it's still weird. And if you thought that was weird, get ready for number 5 because it's about to blow your mind. Number 5 is Qianzhousaurus. Okay, so the name's a mouthful, but this guy is so weird that it has a couple different names. First off, it's called Pinocchio Rex because its snout was extremely long, kind of like Pinocchio's nose. And then it's also called the T-Rex of the East because it was a tyrannosaur relative from China. Well, this one definitely looked more like a T-Rex than some other T-Rex relatives like Albertosaurus and Gorgosaurus. It was a legit mega-predator that grew upwards of 13 meters long. But its head kind of throws a wrench in that whole ferocious image. It had a long and narrow snout like a snake or an eel, which seems totally out of place on something that looks so much like a T-Rex. Some scientists believe that it could have used its long nose to suck up fish like a giant whale, even though there is no evidence that it actually did. Either way, this dino is shockingly weird, and it gets weirder as we go on. Number 4 is Hulcaraptor. This one is super weird because unlike other dinosaurs, it spent a lot of its life in water. It was a relative of Velociraptor that lived in what is now Mongolia around 75 million years ago. And it got its nickname, the scaly dinosaur duck, because it basically acted like a semi-aquatic duck. It walked around on land on its tippy toes with its head held high, and when it hit the water, it would spread its wings and swim around like a duck. It's also believed that it ate fish and other aquatic animals and maybe even hunted other dinosaurs in the water. And to help it with this unusual lifestyle, it had longer legs than most raptors, so that it could run around on land without tipping over, and it had larger feet with webbing in between its toes to help it paddle around in the water. Finally, its neck was extremely flexible so it could reach into crevices and holes to grab whatever prey it wanted. If that's not the weirdest thing you've heard all day, I don't know what is. No. 3 is Dinosaurs. We've actually talked about this guy before, but like Therizinosaurs, it's just too weird to leave off this list. It was a relative of Ankylosaurus that lived in what is now Mongolia around 75 million years ago, and it was super freaking huge. Some believe it was over 24 meters long, although others say it may have been closer to 18 meters. Either way, it was massive. But that's not the weird part. The weird part is that it kind of looked like a duck. It had a gigantic head that kind of resembled the bill of a duck, and it had a hump on its back like a camel. And to top it all off, it was gray and black, just like a pelican. Basically, imagine if a giant duck decided to terrorize the land. That's how weird this dino was. No. 2 is Bahadosaurus. This guy is super weird, although probably not as weird as number 3. It was a relative of Argentinosaurus that lived in what is now Argentina around 90 million years ago. And it was pretty damn huge. This one grew upwards of 20 meters long and weighed somewhere around 20 tons. But unlike other sauropods, it had a frickin' laser beam coming out of its neck. Well, not really a laser beam, but a bunch of spiky osteoderms. These things stuck out from its neck and ran down its back, and they were so big that they would have been impossible to ignore. We're not entirely sure what they were for. Maybe it used them to attract females, or maybe it used them to fight off rivals. Either way, this dinosaur was super strange, and it's not even the weirdest one on this list. And number 1 is Concavator. Okay, so this one isn't totally weird. In fact, it's pretty normal compared to some of the others on this list. But it's still pretty weird. It was a relative of Spinosaurus that lived in what is now Spain around 130 million years ago. And for the most part, it kind of looked like a regular old theropod. It had long and powerful jaws filled with sharp teeth. It had a long tail for balance, and it was built for running. But like Spinosaurus, it had a hump on its back. This hump wasn't exactly huge, but it was still pretty big. And right now, we just don't know what it was for. Some believe that it was a sail, like on a sailback, which would have helped it regulate its body temperature. Others say that it was just a big bump made out of muscle. But until we find more fossils, we won't know for sure. And that's what makes this guy so dang weird. Okay, now that we've talked about some of the weirdest dinosaurs that ever lived, it's time for you to make your voice heard. Which weird dino do you think could make a comeback in Jurassic Park? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're down there, make sure you're subscribed because we've got all kinds of awesome videos coming up. Finally, if you want to see more videos just like this one, then check out the playlist right here. And with that said, I'll see you next time.